بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. In the Quran we see not one but many stories in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us that He guides who He wills. Previously we covered the story of the son of Nuh alayhi salam, who was, after all, the son of a prophet. There is no doubt how much love, affection, guidance this prophet must have offered to his son. Yet guidance was away from him, and we see how he dies in a state of kufr. These stories, they shock us and they make us realize that ultimately we can make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah to keep us all on Islam and keep our hearts connected to Him. And He never takes Iman away from us. We do our best to be as sincere as we can and to act upon this deen to the best of our ability. But in the Quran itself, we also find the other story. And that story is of people who had every reason to just enjoy the luxuries of the world, who didn't grow up in an environment that was surrounded by Islam, who didn't grow up in a place where Allah and the Messenger of Allah were a priority. Yet they chose to be on the straight path. They went out of their way. They searched for the truth. When the truth came to them, they didn't turn a blind eye to it, rather they engaged with it. When you hear of stories of people who found Islam, most of these people, what you'll see is that they, as individuals, are people who are willing to engage with the world with more than what other people probably are willing to offer. And we have one of those stories that we'll be covering today. The story is of the lady who is mentioned and praised in the Quran and also praised at the tongue of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who had every reason to continue to enjoy the luxuries of the palaces that were offered to her, who lived a great royal life, whose husband had the power to fight anyone that he wanted to and destroy them because of how great his army was. Empires fell before him. Yet she saw a prophet of Allah. She heard the message of that prophet. That message resonated with her, and she believed in the prophet. She kept her iman a secret, because she knew that if she openly came out with her iman, it would cost her her life. She continued to keep it a secret. But before we even go into how she became a Muslim, if we step a little back, we see another story that served as a cause, as a sabab for her acceptance of Islam. The great Fir'aun ruled over a vast portion of the land, and his armies were great. He had thousands of people who served him. There was one lady who was given the responsibility of looking after and grooming his own daughters. This story is quoted under the tafsir of Surah Tahrim, ayah number 11, by many mufassirun. This lady was known as the Mashita, the one who combed the hair, the one who took care of the grooming needs of the daughter of Fir'aun. One day she was grooming the daughter of Fir'aun, and she must have dropped her comb, and she said a statement that, may God's destruction, ta'isa, may that person be destroyed who disbelieved in Allah. When the daughter of Fir'aun heard this, she turned around and said, "Who are you talking about? Are you talking about my dad? Are you cursing my dad?" She said, "No, I'm not. I'm talking, I believe in Allah and I don't believe in your father." So this young girl got so angry that she slapped this maid and rushed off to her father and told her father that the lady who's responsible of taking care of me doesn't believe in you. She's a disbeliever. Fir'aun was a man of anger, very irrational. You can imagine how irrational he was when he gave a verdict to kill children that were still in their infancy. So he was, a loose nut. He called this lady, he had her tied up in front of everyone, and he began to torture her. He tortured her relentlessly because she wasn't someone that was significant to him. He can torture her all he wanted to. It wouldn't bother him in any way at all. The Mufassirun, they say that he tied her up to pegs, and after he tied her up, he threatened her that leave your faith, and she said no. And he had a child of hers brought in front of her, and that child was executed and beheaded on the mother. And the lady cried. And he did this a second day, and he kept doing this until finally she died. Fir'aun's wife saw this whole ordeal, and she had already heard the message of Musa alayhi salam and the eloquence of his brother Harun. All of this put together led her to Islam. And sometimes you may be so sincere in your sacrifice that you may not see any results of it while you live, but after you pass, the turn in events start. And that's a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessing someone with ikhlas. That you don't get to, go in and harvest all of the fame from your doings in this world. You leave the world not even sure if anything happened. Like Ibrahim alayhi salam in the construction of the Kaaba, he didn't see millions of people from America or across the world going for Hajj. He did what Allah told him and he left. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gave him reward for it in the world as we see, and only Allah knows what the reward is in the hereafter. Fir'aun's wife accepts Islam, and at some point she couldn't hide it anymore. She comes to Fir'aun and says to him openly, I do not believe in you. You're a Khan. You claim you're a Lord, you are no Lord. She was his wife. She knew him better than anyone did. Some Mufassirun have argued that this wife of his is the same wife who was involved in taking in Musa alayhi salam when he was an infant at the beginning of the story. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there says in Surah Al-Qasas that Fir'aun's wife said, let's bring him in. But other commentators, Ibn Ashur and others, they argue that this is not the same lady. These are two different incidents. These are two different people. Nonetheless, when Fir'aun finds out that his wife has left, his faith and has become a Muslim, he becomes so enraged and so angry that he threatens his wife. I'll do this to you, I'll do that to you, I'll cut you off. She makes it clear to him that once a person believes in Allah, there's no going back. Once a person falls in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't snatch love from someone's heart. And that's the key to grounding someone in Iman, that you have to teach them to love Allah. And this is where most people fail. They teach others the rituals of Islam, but they forget to teach them, they fail to teach them how to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Find me a parent who teaches their child how to love Allah. Find me a community that focuses on loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who makes that their junoon and that their priority. And then on top of that, they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and see the result in that person. Because once the heart is connected to Allah, it will accept nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Arabic poet says, Oh Allah, I'm willing to live my life with everyone being bitter with me as long as you are happy with me. As long as you're happy, Ya Allah, I'm willing to be with you. And I don't care what other people have to say about me. And Asiya bint Muzahim, the wife of Fir'aun, according to one riwayah of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, they tied her also to 4 pegs. Fir'aun sent her out to the desert, and the heat of Egypt is known. The punishment methods that Fir'aun used were also known. And Fir'aun began to punish her, and everyone saw the punishment. It was in front of the eyes of people. Fir'aun would torture her, telling her, give up, give up. And at one point she was lying on her stomach while they had placed a big boulder, like a mill of some sort, on her back while she was tied up, and death was visible in her eyes. And Fir'aun told his people that she's about to break. We only have to do one last thing. We have to remind her what she's sacrificed to come this far. And he told his men, turn her face towards the palaces. And they turned her face towards the palace. And Fir'aun said, if you give up right now, that could be yours again. And in that moment, Asiya bint Muzahim made an iconic dua, so powerful that even though she made it in the desert, today we read it in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us of her dua in this beautiful story of hers. Look at verse number 11. of Surah Al-Tahrim. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ إِذْ قَالَتْ رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Oh Allah, this man is trying to lure me by showing me a palace in the world. You build for me a palace in Jannah. I'll sacrifice all the pleasures of this world. I'll give up all the royal life in this world. I'll give up all the wealth in this world as long as you are with me. وَنَجِّنِي مِن فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ. Protect me from Fir'aun and his doings. وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. And protect me from an oppressive people. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam then tells us that Asiyah bint Muzahim, she died on Iman. And not only that, she is one of the 4 women who Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, hold a rank that no other woman can achieve. And she leaves an example not only for the women, but the man and every human being that will walk on this earth. What's the lesson of Asiyah? Her lesson is, don't fall for the lowly riches of this world, because today they're yours, tomorrow they're someone else's. If you live in this life and have all the luxuries and all the cars and all the homes, but you don't have Allah, you have nothing. More meaningful than that is maybe one day try to fall in love with Allah. Believe in Him. And you may be surrounded by kufr, but you'll find your peace. And people may try to lure you and they'll try to threaten you that if you don't become one of ours, you won't have anything. Be like Asiyah. And every time you see someone flaunt the dunya at you, say, رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Oh Allah, I'll sacrifice the homes of this world as long as you promise me a home in the hereafter. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to follow the role model, this great example of ours, Asiyah bint Muzahim. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with her and us all. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.